All right. Letting one more person in. There's still a few more people coming, but all right. So just to get everyone caught up to speed, we're doing a Canon AMA with Michael Bravin and his team. Thank you guys for joining us from Canon. Today we're going over Canon displays and HDR technology. I think we have to wait. Maybe I can say it, Mike, right? Till after the 20th to do one for cameras.
Yeah.
There'll be an official Canon press release on the 20th, but obviously NAB kind of threw a wrench into the plans for everybody. So Mike Bravin will give like a little run through of what to expect, and then his team, David and Nate, will give us a rundown of display technology, and we'll be able to ask questions. So message me or digitally raise your hand, and we'll have a good session. Mike, it's up to you now. It's all yours.
Cool, great. Thanks for everyone for joining us. I just wanted to give a quick introduction of what we're going to do today. Jamie did mention that Canon is having their virtual press conference on April 20th. If you go to Canon VPC, actually, Charles, can you speak up? And is it Canon VPC 2020?
Yeah, it's usa.canon.com/VPC 2020. And it's going to be
VPC 2020.
Yeah, VPC 2020. April 20th at 1 p.m. Pacific, or 1 p.m. Eastern. Sorry.
Okay, and we'll put the link in the chat in a moment. And the reason I mention that is that there are some products that we're going to be talking about that we would have introduced at NAB. And after that, we'll be able to share with you some of the technology that we have that's separate from what we're going to talk about today, which is our display, our 4K HDR display technology. And our two presenters today are David Doko, and David works with me in Canon Burbank. He's a technical specialist, and his job at Burbank is to support the technical aspects of our facility, our server room, our projector, and
whoops, I think we lost Michael for a bit. Okay.
HDR reference displays and support for them in the community. And our other presenter is Nate McFarland, and he's a senior quality engineer for Canon, and he's responsible for reference displays and our new color calibration service, which he'll talk about. So I'm going to turn the podium over to Nate, and he's going to do a brief PowerPoint presentation. David will do some technical demonstration with, and then the rest of the time will be for Q&A. Nate?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Nice to meet you. I just want to make sure right away that everyone can see my screen. I assume it's working well. So just let me know if there's any issues. Like Michael said, I'm Nate. I'm a senior quality engineer that handles our display products. I'm based out of Long Island, New York, where the headquarters is for Canon in the US. But we work frequently with our Burbank partners, especially for the displays, because that's where a majority of the market is they live on either the West or the East Coast. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview of our entire lineup of HDR reference displays. This is going to be pretty general, and then David will get into more of the nitty-gritty as far as actually some of the functionality. So I'll kind of pause after every few slides and allow time for questions as we go, just because this is going to be pretty high level, but feel free to ask any detailed questions as we go. So just right away, kind of an overall look at our lineup. Our displays come in 3 different size variations. We have 17 inches, 24 inches, and 31 inches. And within these 3 size variations, we kind of have 6 current products or current models. So just to give you kind of a holistic view of, the timeline of Canon's displays, a lot of the most common things I hear right away when I'm at trade shows or visiting clients is, we didn't even know Canon made displays. And that's pretty common, and we're pretty new to this marketplace. So as you can see, we didn't release our first model until 2014. This was the DPV-3010. It was a 30-inch SDR display. And then a year later, we followed it up with our 2410, which is still more geared for SDR. It was our first 24-inch display. And that launched in 2015, which was the same year that the Sony X300 launched, which I'm sure many of you guys work with are familiar with. That's been kind of the staple in the industry. So we had a few bumps getting into the market just because we were battling against, that kind of giant. And then things really started to spice up in 2016 for our lineup. This is kind of the beginning of our current lineup. So the first launch was 2016 with a 2420. It was a 1000 nit 24-inch monitor. It could be boosted all the way up to 1200 nits. It did really well for us. 2017, we came out with our first 17-inch model, which is more geared towards that broadcast truck, OB studio, things like that, and then obviously your live set applications as well. 2018, we launched our 2411, which is actually to date our most successful model, and we'll get into more details on that in a minute. And then we also launched 2 other upgrades, or kind of sister brother models, if you will, to the existing displays, in the 2421 and the 1711. Now, the only differences between these 2 new models and their predecessors are the previous models were 3G and 6G, and then both the 2421 and the 1711 support 12G SDI in the back. And then at the tail end of last year, in December, we launched our brand new flagship, the 3120, which is an outstanding HDR monitor. It does 2000 nits full field with a 2:1,000,000 contrast ratio, blacks all the way down to 0.001. So this is kind of our new baby. And then these 6 models kind of represent the core of our overall lineup. And you can see here we cover every aspect of production, from acquisition all the way through post. So you can see kind of, these are just some example use cases. You can see, we can cover 4K shooting locations, OB vans, studios, things like that, and then your color suites or your editing rooms as well. So just to go down the lineup, I want to give some highlight image quality specifications here. So an important note to note right away is that we don't make an HD display. All of our displays are 4K capable. Our 17 inches is the only one that is UHD and not that full DCI 4K resolution. So this is an important thing to note right away. I think this is going to become more and more prevalent in the market, even in broadcast, where people are now starting to get serious about 4K, and these kind of resolutions are going to be kind of almost required. Next thing is peak luminance. So for the 17-inch displays, they have a 300 nit native peak luminance. I've put a little disclaimer down here that you can purchase a license to upgrade those to 600 nits. The 2411, our most successful model, that's 1000 nits full field. 2421, 2420 can do 1200 nits. And then the 3120, as I mentioned earlier, is 2000 nits. Now, I want to make a disclaimer about all of our brightness specifications, in that unlike other manufacturers, when I give you a brightness specification, I'm talking full field edge to edge. I'm not talking just a 10% or a 15, 20% window in the center. I'm talking about this thing can sustain that number edge to edge with no degradation in image quality. So that's an important thing to note there. Similarly with brightness, obviously you want to know what the black level is. So for our 17s and 24s, that's capped at 0.005 nits. Our 3120 is the only one right now that can do 0.001. I will say a little tidbit here that coming the 20th, we'll have some updates coming for all of our displays, so please stay tuned for that. Those will affect image quality specifications as well. And then bit depth, all of our displays are 10-bit across the board, except the 17s, which are native 8-bit. But it's important to note that they can also accept signals for higher bit depths. So obviously our 17s can accept 10-bit signals, our 24s and our 31s can accept 12-bit signals. And then I added this in because Jamie had mentioned you guys would probably want to know what the price is. So here's the list price for all these models. So if you were going to go to a dealer or buy direct, the list price is shown here. So our 17s start at 12,000, 2411 starts at 18,000, the 2420 series at 29, and then our 3120 at 39. So this is what you would pay if you were just to go right away to a dealer or direct with no discounts or things like that.
Hey, Nate, quick question.
Sure.
Somebody was asking, when you say it's full nits edge to edge, is there no throttling when you're like a full white image or a mostly white image going on? Like, how long can it sustain that image?
Yes, so it can sustain that for however long as you want to turn it on. There's no degradation. There's no drop off or throttling there. It's full field that can sustain that, and you're not gonna need to worry about blowing out your circuits or anything. The displays are spec'd and ready to do that for you.
Nice.
Good question. So moving on, I'm going to now talk just briefly about some of the key models. So 17-inch, this is obviously ideal, like we talked about earlier, for more of the broadcast or live production environment. So you can see kind of some general use cases here. perfect for on-set HDR, perfect for OB bands, where that 17 form factor is really ideal. Fun fact, it's the only one of our displays that we sell with accessories. So I've highlighted in the top right here, these are the 2 accessories that you can purchase them with. On the left, you'll see the rack mount ears. These do fit in a 7U rack. And then the right side is a screen protector if you wanted to use it on set. We have actually found that nobody really uses the screen protector just because they don't want to interfere with, color or image quality. They don't want to have to look through another layer. When we're talking size, 17-inch display, it's only 17 pounds, so you can very easily hold it in one arm. Most of our displays come with this carry handle that you can see here, and it's just really ideal for carrying it around easily on one set. Now, going to the back end, this is kind of where you're going to find all of your inputs and output terminals. So as I mentioned, depending on the model, if you go with the 1710, all of your SDIs are going to be 6G capable. If you go to the 1711, then all of those SDIs are now 12G capable. You'll notice that there's 8 total ports here. Those are 4 in and 4 out. So if you did want to do a pass-through loop, that is possible on all of our displays. You'll also see a LAN terminal and a DC terminal for power. The LAN terminal is used to either link the display to other displays, so you could simultaneously control them, or it can be linked to a PC to control remotely via our web tool. It also has a HDMI terminal, which can do 4K SDCR 30 FPS. The thing that's unique about our 17s is they do come included with a tally light system. So just like your cameras, you have the red, amber, and green, just to give you the live standby stop, etc. And then I just put this as a disclaimer here because this is more kind of a common configuration you'll see for displays of this form factor. You'll see them typically used in large arrays like this. So before I move on to the 24, is there any questions right away with the 17s?
Yeah, they're wondering what's the full power draw at full brightness on 12 volt.
Oh, okay, good. So I actually had written that down. So at maximum load, the 17s you're looking at 140 watts.
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay, move on to 2411 now. So 2411 is unique in that it blends that really small form factor with some pretty outstanding HDR image qualities in the 1000 nit capability here. So it's, like I said earlier, it's our most successful model. This has been used on countless Netflix shows. It's in a few rental houses. It's definitely the most popular that we have out there at the current time. Looking at the top left here, your inputs and outputs are very similar across all of our displays. So you'll see no difference here. The 2411 is full 12G capable. You have the same LAN, the same DC, and HDMI terminals there. Now you're obviously, with the increase in screen size, you're increasing weight as well. So you went from 17 to 26 pounds. You can see from the side view that it's pretty slim there as well. So the middle graph, this is an important one. So this is our boost mode. So natively, the 2411 does 600 nits full field. If you implement our boost function, this will get you up to 1000 nits full field, but that does come at a sacrifice of your black level. So when you were previously at 0.005 black, when you enable that boost function, now that goes all the way up to 1 nit black. Like I said earlier, this will be changing soon, so stay tuned for updates on that. And then obviously, as compared to the 17-inch, you're now making the jump from 8-bit to 10-bit, which is huge. I don't think I need to explain 10-bit to you guys. I'm sure you're all familiar with that. So that's just a basic overview of the 24. And the 2411 is actually the model that David has with him, and he'll be demoing all of our HDR toolkit functions on. Any questions on the 2411 before I move on? Oh, and max power load for the 2411 is 230 watts. All right, I'll move on now. So 3120, as I mentioned earlier, this is our new flagship, our new baby, really engineered for HDR post-production. So this is an important image I like to show when we're doing our 3120. So we made a lot of updates, completely redesigned the backlight system compared to the previous models. So all of our displays are single LCD panels with LED backlights. So for some of our previous models, we used RGB LEDs. For the 3120, we've switched that over to white LEDs. And then we've also dramatically increased the number of total LEDs. So this will give us about 5 times as many local dimming zones as the predecessor models. Unfortunately, I can't reveal to you guys specific numbers for those zones, but just know that compared to 2420 or 2411, you're looking at about 5 times as many zones. So your halation and other artifacts that you would see around stark contrast areas like white text on a black background, for example, is very, very reduced in the 3120, which is a great achievement. This redesigned backlight also allows us to completely revamp the overall contrast ratio. So you're looking at, like we said earlier, 0.001 nits all the way up to 2000 nits, which gives you that 2 million to 1 ratio. And then the big thing here is that this display exceeds the Dolby Vision certified requirements for the Dolby Vision certified post-production facilities. So when you want to go get your post-production facility certified to handle Dolby Vision, they're going to go ahead and measure these 9 key image quality items here that I've listed. And you can see here that we've not only met each spec in the minimum requirement, but we've met it in the preferred requirement. So they've actually made some amendments to these specifications recently. And the biggest change they made is that for peak luminance, they're looking at least 2000 nits or above for preferred. So we're one of the only displays on the market that can handle all of these specs in the preferred category right out of the box. So this is pretty big. If you're looking to make a purchase, you can be confident that the 3120 will be adequate for your setup, not just for a few years, but years to come.
Hey Nate, quick question.
Sure, go for it.
Any plans to put this this level of local dimming into a 24-inch model?
I will say stay tuned to April 20th. Yes, that is something we've been working on.
Yeah. All right.
So,
just so everyone knows, after April 20th, a lot more information will be available.
Correct. Okay, great questions. So moving on, these are just kind of generic facts about all of our displays that I wanted to give you guys. So obviously they support all of the common industry standard color spaces, all the way from SDR to HDR. So your 709, your P3, your 2020 ACES, things like that. It has plenty of built-in EOTF functions. So it has your typical power, 22, 24, 26, things like that, all the way to HLG, PQ. We have support for Canon log, S-log. All of these things are built right in. As long as EOTFs are concerned as well, you can import custom EOTF functions if you want as well. It's very easy. In that same vein, we do support user LUT inputs. So all of our displays, you'll notice if you were to see one, have a USB port in the bottom right or the bottom left of the display panel. That's used for importing and exporting LUTs function information. So if you were to dial in one display and you had another one in another room, you don't have to go manually set that up. You could export all the menu functions and just import them into your second display for easy setup. And then the most important or the most popular feature of that USB port is actually our screen capture feature, which David will go over later, but essentially allows you to take a screen capture of the display and save it directly for USB. So that's pretty important if you wanted to go ahead, quickly email like a reference still or look at things for QC purposes as well. Same thing with just the gamuts and the EOTF support. We're compatible with pretty much every single color format in the business. So RGB, YCBCR, XYZ, even got the new Dolby ITCCP standards in there as well. So 12G SDI support, we already kind of touched on this earlier, but this is obviously huge just because you can do 4K 422 at 60 FPS with one cable. This is pretty big for the broadcast guys, especially in their trucks. Any time that they can reduce cable volume is a huge win. So not only can you do a split screen with each one of these things, but obviously you can do a full screen 4K image as well. And interesting to note about this split or quad view is that you could assign custom picture or LUTs to each one of those quadrants. So say you wanted to have the same image on all 4 quadrants, but you wanted to have LUTs 1, 2, 3, 4, you can do that as well. It's very easy and intuitive to set up that way. And then another unique thing about for 12G capable a monitor like this is that you can view 8K images, right? So to get an 8K image, you would need all 4 12G SDI signals, but this is one of the only monitors on the market that can actually display 8K images. Now, obviously, the panels themselves are only 4K native resolution, so the 8K image will be downscaled, but the ability just to see that image is unique in a reference monitor right now. Now, another thing that we'd like to really praise about our displays is our award-winning toolkit. So this includes an entire suite of engineering tools that are designed to help remove ambiguity in HDR imaging. So things like camera metadata, web control, waveform vector scope monitors. You can see the list of features here. David will go over more of these in detail, but these are kind of some of the highlight key features that we like to point out. And this is really something that we pride ourselves in. And not only do all of our panels have really outstanding imaging, image quality specs and color science behind them, but we give the users a lot of tools to be able to play with and ensure that they're looking at the images accurately, especially as HDR standards are continuously evolving. It becomes, you know, tricky to keep track of all that stuff. So we kind of designed this suite of tools around just allowing you to be able to quickly and easily analyze the images you're looking at. And this did win us an Engineering Excellence Award from the HPA Association a few years ago that we're very proud of. It's actually on display in the Burbank facility if you ever wanted to check it out when we all open back up.
Hey, Nate.
Yep.
Sorry to interject real quick.
No
People are curious about HD support. Can you do a quadrant with 4 HD signals, and does it scale up HD?
Yep. So we have our own interpolation algorithms. It's called shape trace, but we can accept any, you know, resolutions lower than 4K as well, and you can do split screen and things like that with those resolutions just the same.
Okay.
Good question.
And then also, can you preview both HDR and SDR at the same time?
Yep, so that's a very important compare feature. You can actually see in the bottom right here of this image. These images are simulated, so this isn't the clearest view, but we can do HDR and SDR side by side. That's a very important thing. So you can either do it in the configuration they have here listed in this slide where it's a full screen image and there's just a divider on the half, or you can kind of superimpose 2 full frames, you know, left and right. Obviously you want to be taking up the full screen of the monitor then, but if you wanted to see what the full image looks like in comparison, you can do it that way as well.
When you're in the white mode, can you move the white side to side or up and down?
That is not able to be done, unfortunately, right now, but we are, you know, another thing we like to pride ourselves on is we do frequent annual updates a few times a year, and most of those updates come right from user feedback. So if we get enough requests to do something, then our engineering folks over in Japan can look into implementing those sort of improvements.
All right, cool, thank you.
Yep, no worries, good questions. And then this is actually the last slide I have for you. So Michael alluded to earlier that we've recently launched a color calibration service for display products. So we did a lot of user research, and we found very quickly that as we talked to folks, and I've put some quotes here from some leaders, Warner Brothers eFilm, Legendary Films, this became very apparent to us that there's no one really grabbing this market right now. This market is primarily saturated by freelancers or folks from, you know, ISF or Calman, Portrait Displays, Calman. We've worked very closely with both of those guys to get our own certifications, and they've been great in helping us launch our own workflows and methodologies to do calibration. But this is something that we're really proud of, and this service just launched at the beginning of 2020, and we're servicing anywhere in the continental US right now. We're already looking to expand to both Canada and the Latin American market. And Jamie and I, we'd actually talked a few days ago, or yesterday rather, about, you know, we are potentially looking into in the future partner with more freelancers to kind of, you know, help us expand in this realm. And if you have any questions about this service or what we're looking like now, I'd be happy to answer those here. And an important thing to note is that we're not just doing calibrations on Canon monitors here, we're calibrating anything. So when all of our engineers got certified to do calibration, you're not getting certified just to calibrate Canon monitors, you're getting certified to calibrate any sort of monitor. So the methodologies are the same, it's just that every manufacturer tends to call things differently. So where we might say contrast, another manufacturer might say brightness or black in their menu system, and it's just the nature of, you know, figuring out which each menu control does. We've also integrated our displays in the same vein with Portrait Displays Calman, so they do support AutoCal for SDR, and they're currently working to build the HDR workflows out, so you can do automatic calibrations on our displays using Calman via a 3D LUT that's just built right into the display with the Calman software.
Hey, Nate, I got a few questions for you.
Yeah, please fire away.
Are you guys going to provide classes on the calibration service, and would you mind talking more about like the freelance side of this and like training it up and getting people involved outside of just Canon?
That's a great question. So as part of our service, we do offer training as well, because we find that a lot of our would-be clients are people that kind of have the tools, or they have maybe some base level tooling, but they're not very experienced, or they're not sure how to really use it. So a very frequent thing we've done is, you know, I'll go out to your site, we'll calibrate your displays for you while I'm there, but you'll be over the shoulder with me and we'll be walking you through step by step so that, you know, after I'm done, you can now take the ring and calibrate your facility yourself. And then we've also run into kind of the inverse where people are realizing how important calibration is, but they're not really prepared to make the investment in the tooling, because you're looking at easily tens of thousands of dollars with these toolings, right? So you need to get your colorimeter, your pattern generator, your software, and all three of those things require yearly calibrations or renewals in and of themselves, right? So it's a lot of money to invest upfront for something that you may not be experienced with yourself. So we kind of find that it's typically either we're setting up reoccurring services where, you know, we'll go in there 2-3 times a year, or we're going to kind of go with you, hold your hand, if you will, through the first time, and then you'll be set to do it by yourself for the foreseeable future. Now, we haven't yet set up any sort of formal training through Canon to do these things, but this is definitely something we're open to. I actually spoke with my management staff before this meeting, and they wanted me to reiterate that this program is very much in the infancy stages of being launched, but we're very open to any possibilities of future partnerships or education. And really what we strive to do with the service is not only, you know, educate people about the importance, but then also train people about how to do it themselves and offer a service that's really all encompassing here for display calibration. So definitely would love to, you know, talk to you, Jamie, or anyone else in the chat about potential, you know, educational opportunities or partnership opportunities in the future here, because I think that's a great idea.
Great. Did anyone have any more questions about the color calibration service?
What I was going to mention, Jamie, this is Michael, is that we could talk more about it, but if it makes sense, we could schedule some sort of a training event at Burbank, and then we can find a place to do it on the East Coast also.
Okay.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, that's all I had for my portion, and I can.
I think
provide...
we had a few more. We had a few more
sure.
technical questions, but should we hold off until David's in front of the monitor? Or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, either way, we could go.
So I'll stop my PowerPoint there, but I'll
Thanks,
also
Nate.
provide this to you, Jamie, if you want to distribute it to the group afterwards.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, why don't I talk about what I have here, which is the V2411. It's as Nate said already, it's a 24-inch display, and it's our most popular display for on-set because it hits a few spec marks that none of our competitors can achieve. One, it can actually give you a peak luminance of 1,000 nits. Natively, it's a 600 nit display, but it has a boost mode, which gives you the capability to see regions of the image at that peak luminance of 1,000 nits. And it's also popular because it's very light. I believe it's only 21 pounds, and it runs off of DC XLR battery. So for those reasons, it's been very popular for on-set HDR monitoring. And he went over the HDR toolset, which is really a software toolset, added value. And you could assign any of these function keys here in the front to any of those tools. You can't see it really well in this wide zoom that I have in the zoom camera, but I will share my screen and show you the tools as a screen grab. So you could, I hope you can see this on my desktop, but it's basically something I just captured off of this. And as Nate mentioned, you could do a screen capture, a 4K screen capture from any of our displays, and you can save it out to this USB thumb drive here, and it'll give you basically whatever is on the screen. You can just capture it. So when the tools are on the screen, you can capture it. When there's a waveform on the screen, you can capture that too. Or you can capture it without any of these additional HDR metering tools. You see here on the left where my mouse is that this is what we call the frame luminance monitor. And this gives you a rundown on the peak luminance and the average luminance in nits of what's playing. So what's playing right now on this screen actually is HDR material. And when you do have the display set in an HDR preset, everything follows along in that you'll see all the scales and nits. And so here, the histogram as well. We have a histogram tool which kind of breaks down for you boundaries between SDR, which is we call 100 nits, that boundary, and HDR. you'll see the preponderance of your luminance in this scale for SDR and for HDR, and you'll see that the waveform 2 follows that nit scale from 0 to 10,000 nits, which is the 70-20-84 nit scale. And so it's intelligent in that everything switches over from an IRE value to nits. The absolute reference of nits is what is required for PQ, the transfer function, EOTF PQ. Stop sharing the screen. So like I said, every one of these tools can be called up with the function key, and you can just turn it off as easily. And I'm just going to turn off some of these tools that you saw there. We have some tools that you did not see in that screen grab. One of them is the compare view, and the compare view, we touched on that already. It's ability to see both an HDR image and an SDR image side by side. You could, again, just program that into a function key here. And here you're using what's called single image dual view, where you're gonna take one image and you can actually break it down with for an HDR view and then an SDR view. And this is basically does a bit of tone mapping for you. However, you can also just give 2 inputs into the display, and you could partition the display for the one side being HDR and having that luminance capability of 600 nits, and then the other side having a luminance capability of a peak of 100 nits, so that you can actually see two different images, one in HDR, Rec 2020, one in SDR, Rec 709. And that is, again, a really cool feature that we have.
Hey, David, quick question. For all the features that you're showing, is there a way over Ethernet? Because a lot of us would probably connect this monitor, say, to like our networks. Is there a way to like, control all these settings, like do frame captures in 4K over Ethernet, or control the monitor in over Ethernet?
Yeah, we do have a browser actually that you could just, there's a built-in web browser in the display. And let me see if I can find that on my.
Yeah, that's our web control GUI that you can give you full functionality of the display via browser. It's also supported if you plug in a Wi-Fi adapter to the USB on the displays. You can also get the same functionality on like an iPad, for example.
Fantastic.
Right. So you can call this, as you see on my screen, you can call up all these functions from a web browser or an iPad or tablet, and that can make it really easy for you to just switch over to the different presets. Just as you could see in these picture modes, you know, you can, in the menus themselves, we have some quick presets that you can quickly dial in, like a PQ Rec 2020 preset, or an HLG Rec 2020 preset, or a P3 Rec 20 P3 PQ preset. So all those can be just quickly changed on the fly. One of the great features that we also have that I can't necessarily demonstrate for you really quickly is that we do have built-in LUTs, and those LUTs, am I still sharing my screen? I don't think so.
No.
Okay. Well, those built-in LUTs are for like when you're shooting, not just with Canon cameras, but when you're shooting with Panasonic V-Log, or even with Sony S-Log and Arri Log C. So we have these built-in LUTs so that we can do the transforms for you without having you to load in LUTs, and that can be very useful. So we also have a function where if you're shooting with Canon cameras, we have something called EOS Link, and that will allow you to see the metadata that your camera is shooting at, the ISO, the color temperature, the aperture of the lens, if it's an EF lens, if it's chipped, and that will show up in a little screen here on the left-hand side. And similarly with Arri, we actually use the protocols for Arri Link so that you can see the Arri metadata. And we hope to add more features with other cameras in the future.
Cool. Is it possible to send the monitor an SDR signal and have it like tone map or scale up to HDR as like a demo, or? No, we can do the HDR to SDR. We have built-in tone mapping for that, but we don't have the reverse SDR to HDR. That would be interesting, but we don't have that. So you still have to use like an Aja FS HDR to accomplish that? Yeah, you guys probably have more experience with the Aja
I know they had different tools for the, different tone mapping. I wasn't aware that they actually had an SDR to HDR capability in some of their FS, but I believe that the product is called FS HDR or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's an interesting concept. Or what's really probably more useful might be that you can take the log signal coming from the camera, and then you could, from your LUT or from that Aja tool, you could send out both an SDR version in Rec 709 and in one spigot, and then an HDR version in another spigot, and that could be useful. But we don't have that capability in the display itself. There's another tool that's useful, and I touched on it quickly, but that's the you can't see it in dual view mode. I'm going to get out of this, and again, you could just press a button to get out of the dual view mode. But we have the what's called a pixel checker, and this will let you. It's basically a cursor that lets you see the RGB code values and also the peak luminance in candelas per meter squared or nits, and you can move that anywhere in the screen to take a quick look as to the value in that area of interest. For focus, we have some great tools. We have what's called, we have the traditional zoom features, but the zooms are all the way up to 8x zoom, so you can really check your 4K focus, which of course is critical. It's really hard to nail focus in 4K because of the circles of confusion. It's so much more critical, but you can actually move that zone where you're zoomed in around with this cursor, and it's interactive, so you can really check any area of the image that you want to. We also have a peaking feature, and that again can be very useful. Fortunately, this is jumped into the dual screen mode because it's set to automatic mode. I can just turn that off. Automatic mode means that any feature that you use will just go automatically to dual view. But turning that off, you might be able to see like the peaking feature working here quite well, and you can change the thickness of that peaking.
Hey, David, quick question.
Yeah.
Is there a tool in the monitor to limit the peak nits? So if you were able to go to 1,000 nits or whatever, you could like set it to 500 or 600, just even temporarily, or
absolutely. In fact, I had to set the peak luminance of this display way down because it was so bright. It was too bright, and that it was just blowing out the luminance that you see. So you can just. So natively, it's a 600 nit display, and at 600 nits, you'll achieve the best blacks. So at that luminance, you just change what's called our contrast dial here, and basically 6,000, if you can see it, is 600 nits. Similarly, you can actually choose a different clip level. So say you wanted to clip your image at for whatever reason at 500 nits, you could actually clip it at 500 nits. Right now, I have it clipped at 600 nits. The signal itself is actually, varies. The signal that's coming into the display varies from 1,000 nits to 2,000 nits because this is actually graded. This material was actually graded for a 3120, which is a 2,000 nit display. So we have a really unique feature called the HDR range feature, and it's something that other manufacturers have something similar, but nothing as precise as our HDR range feature. So say you do have a 2,000 nit signal, and this is just a 600 nit display, which with our boost feature can be used for, whoops, I have that set to peaking. But so if we're just running this display at 600 nits and you have a 2,000 nit signal, you can actually use this display to see into the areas of luminance that are graded for 2,000 nits by setting the HDR range feature all the way to 2,000. And what this allows you to do is then you see into those highlights and into the regions of luminance that are graded beyond the native capability of the display. What it does is it applies a linear compression of entire dynamic range of that signal. So it's not tone mapping. It's a completely linear compression of the luminance range. But what it allows you to do is you then see into those the areas of luminance that are beyond the capabilities of a 600 nit display. This is actually capable.
Can you program that to like a user button so you don't have to like set it up each time, or?
You can program it to a user button, a channel button as a preset. And what will that do is that basically it's using it as a preset. You can't, it's not really a function, but it can be dialed into a preset, and you can just use one of these channel buttons to give you different presets. So there's 3 right here, and you can set a preset for Rec 709, Gamma 2.4, say. You can set the other channel button to a preset of PQ Rec 2020 with HDR range set to 600 to match the 600 nit luminance of the display. And for the 3rd channel button, you can actually set then an HDR range which is beyond the capability of the display at 2000 nits, and then you could quickly flip between the two. Say you did want to look into the areas of luminance beyond 600 nits. As a quick preview, you could just set, flip the channel to channel 3, flip back the channel to see the absolute reference of what PQ should look like. And that can be a useful feature. This is actually, this is a 600 nit display, but it does have a boost mode. And you could set this as one of the function keys. I just ran out of function keys in my demo, but you could just set that. You can see that it then gives you the ability, it actually just boosts it to 1000 nits. It's very useful, one, when you want to see into those areas of luminance beyond 600 nits. And secondly, when you're working outdoors, you just need something a little bit brighter. And so when you're working outdoors, of course, your eyes are shutting down, and even in a tent, there's a lot of leakage, and that, so the shadow area isn't as important. And so that this 1000 nit capability can still be very useful. But most of the time I find that DPs are working with the display at 600 nits because they want those deep blacks.
David, we have a question from Chris. Chris, unmute yourself and you can go ahead and ask.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, it's kind of more of a general question, but just as an example, if you have like a 17-inch panel and 24-inch panel and SDR next to each other, and you calibrate both the monitors the same, contrast can be kind of subjective.
Oh, hey,
FDRs.
sorry. Oh, sorry, Chris, you're breaking up.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I
caught.
People are talking behind me. So my question is, how bright is too bright based on panel size? So if you're using a 17-inch panel or 24-inch panel, do you get to a point where 600 nits is good enough, or 2000 nits is good enough?
Well, I think it's more a question of what you're targeting, because PQ is absolute. That luminance level should be identical. Like say you run the 1711 or 1710 at 600 nits, and you want it as well to have a 24-inch side by side with the 17-inch on your cart. When you set the displays to run at 600 nits on both displays, that luminance level, because it's PQ, which is an absolute reference level, it should be the same. Of course, when you have a bigger screen, just like when you go to, like, say, a theater, Dolby Vision theater, the bigger the screen, the more perceptually it's brighter. So perceptually, the 24-inch will be brighter. However, measurement and wise, it's the same. You just have to calibrate it correctly, so that when you're setting it to 600 nits, it's calibrated so that it's actually nailing 600 nits.
Yeah, I guess my question is, as new monitors come out and they get brighter and brighter and brighter, how bright is bright enough for a 24-inch field monitor?
I see. I think that has a lot to do with your team. Like say your DP and the path for your final delivery is 1000 nits, let's say, or 2000 nits. Bright enough would be bright enough is really dependent upon what that target is. Like say they are really pretty set on delivering for 1000 nits. So that means that you, as a DAT working with a DP and the team, need a display that's capable of 1000 nits, and you need to hit that spec in order to do so. One of the things I found in working with some DPs is that this is a 600 nit display, and it's superior to anything on the market. However, they're targeting 1000 nits because that's a very common spec. You know, the spec is 1000 nits for the final deliverable in a lot of shows. So how do you use a 600 nit display when you're targeting 1000 nits? Well, one of the facts is that the luminance range between 600 nits and 1000 is really reserved for just speculars. You know, when you see the preponderance of where the image luminance lies in the histogram or waveform, you'll find that most of the skin tones are way below 200 nits, and 200 nits is really what's a reference for diffuse white. So beyond 200 nits, it's pretty much speculars, and you're not really using the 600 to 1000 nits very much. However, that's still an important region of the image area to see. So these people are using the display and knowing that, still relying on their waveform to see beyond the 600 nits, but they can always flip in, like we were discussing, onto a third channel, a third preset or a second preset, and they can run the display at 1000 nits so that they can actually look into those regions, you know, beyond 600 nits. And
David, this is Michael. Do you want to just briefly go over what Eric Messerschmidt and Armando Salas's workflows were using the monitors? Yeah,
they are two of the DPs, cinematographers, who are using this exact display to deliver for 1000 nit color grades. So in talking with them, we had to make the decision, you know, whether to run the display at 600 nits or 1000 nits. And in their testing, they found that most of the time, and when you look at their shows, Mindhunter or Ozark or whatever other shows that I'm on, I think he did Raising Dion originally, you'll find that, like, even in their HDR versions of the shows that they're doing, they're really not going beyond 600 nits. It's very rare that they actually go beyond 600 nits. So they didn't have, it all depends on the show, but they didn't have a great need to really go beyond the 600 nits. And when they did, I showed them how to actually use this display to quickly look into those regions. You know, like I said, this is a versatile display because it can run at 1000 nits, and it gives you the ability to quickly do that, and the tools to do that. So the combination of the waveform, which can be 1724, the combination of these HDR tools, ability to go to 1000 nits, just makes it a useful tool for you to both, you know, use the display as with its really great blacks, but also to look into those to still target that 1000 nits that a lot of these shows are finishing in.
Hey, David, quick question. I think I can speak for a lot of DITs. Like we're typically sitting in like a dark, you know, tent environment on set. Yeah. And then if we're looking at this monitor, but say the camera assistant goes and changes the lens, we can possibly, and the camera's looking at, you know, day exterior sky, we can get blasted with a full white frame, and it can, you know, it happens in a second. And it can last for a bit. I think that's what people are kind of concerned about, is like, does the monitor have a feature to stop like full white from taking over the screen, you know, in those kind of situations? Because everyone's kind of concerned about that. You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, there's no like radiation damage or anything, but I can understand it still blinds you, and it makes your eye close down for a while. Yeah, and that's gonna be annoying.
It will be really jarring. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's no like built-in like save your eye feature. It's like way worse than our 2000 nit display. Like when you our 3120, that's really blinding. Like when you're running 3020, 600 nits, it's not that bad, to tell you the truth. Some of the displays, as we get progressively brighter in these displays, it certainly is it is something that we should note. Maybe I don't know, a limiter of some kind.
Yeah, I think people would really appreciate that, because especially if it's detecting like the entire screen, or like over 90% is white and it's full white.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it happens in a second, just to clamp that down so we're not blowing out our eyeballs. Because it could happen if we have 3 monitors on one cart, right. You know, it could happen on 3 monitors and we're totally jarred, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting that you know, the APL does that automatically, but as Nate said, all our screens have no APL, meaning power limiters, and
Right.
so it just blasts the full screen luminance. But that's a reverse way to actually say, oh, maybe, you know, there's some sort of like smart, intelligent way to kind of figure out that it shouldn't necessarily be more than 90 or 80% full white. What only patterns do that, right? So it shouldn't necessarily be a real world image.
It's a good idea, though. I'll definitely take that to my colleagues in Japan.
It's a legitimate concern for sure.
Sure.
Yeah,
And I guess
we can
people are
get
wondering if
brighter.
600 nits kind of like what people are defaulting to, unless they really see a benefit in monitoring 1,000 nits on set.
They're not defaulting to that. They're I think just my demonstrations was just because this is a 600 nit display, but it's not necessarily a default for anything.
I think it's a really, I think Chris's question is like a really important kind of conversation piece that's happening in the industry. You know, when we talk to people, you know, whenever we announce the next monitor with even higher brightness, there's, you know, a whole horde of people that are always extremely excited because now they have so much headroom. But then there's also another half of people that are always very skeptical, like, oh my gosh, why do we need another 1,000 nits? Like, I'm barely using 1,000. Why would I ever need 2,000? And I think you just kind of have to think of it like holistically. So even on set, you know, from the people I've talked to, I think in the past, monitors were more considered kind of like an afterthought or more of like a viewing device rather than a reference device for what your mastering might end up looking like. So I think, especially now with the technology improving, people are really starting to take HDR monitors on set much more seriously. And I know, you know, the bodies like Netflix and others are going to start mandating, you know, eventually maybe some either calibration techniques or maybe eventually down the road, even certain kind of monitor specifications. But as the, you know, we continue to improve, I think you'll see the creatives start to follow suit and really start to utilize, you know, that extra headroom that they have. You know, like David was saying, even if you're mastering for 1,000 nits, I think just because people in the past aren't very used to seeing that on set, they're not really taking advantage of all that extra headroom. So that's where having these tools, you know, like those, you know, HDR toolkit that we have that can confirm luminance values and nit ranges like that can really help you push the threshold. So that's one of my favorite things about the histogram, the new histogram feature we have, is that'll actually give you an exact percentage of what overall percentage of your frame is actually within HDR ranges. And more often than not, we see even on HDR shows, people are only using maybe like 0 to 5% of the image that's encapsulated within HDR luminance. So I think arming creatives with that knowledge and, you know, kind of the numbers behind it will only, you know, encourage people to start, you know, dabbling more in those ranges.
Awesome. Do you guys have any more, I guess, slides or even a demo of like the Ethernet controls? I guess people are wondering how much you can really control on the monitor, and if possible, can you assign hotkeys to that so we can control them with our stream decks to kind of automate setups or presets?
Yeah, so another thing that I wanted to mention previously about the web control is that the user interface or the GUI that David was showing, that's just our default GUI, but we're very open to releasing SDKs if, you know, people wanted to build their own platform or GUI around that. That's something that we're very open to, because right now it's kind of limited to what you see is what you get as far as our controls, but we're definitely looking to open that up in the future and are very open to people building their own platforms or integrations with that. So I don't know, David, is it possible for you to demo that with your current setup? It might be a little tough.
Yeah, I didn't have any more screen grabs from the web GUI other than that. Again, it's really not only good for you to listen to us, but for us to listen to you, because I wasn't even aware that you're using something called Stream Deck. So is that like a, I don't know, is it an app or is it like an actual
Stream Deck is like a little button panel, and you can program the buttons to do anything.
Oh,
and
cool.
For us, like if you can program the zoom feature to like a hotkey. Yeah, Chris is showing it. Chris Bolton.
Okay, so it's almost like a switcher. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can program it to do anything, but you know, when you start getting into like advanced, you know, controls with the monitor, like you can press one button and it can do a whole series of events, like unlimited. So I think I would have one that's like a nit threshold button. So if they're changing lenses, it doesn't go above 100, you know, nits.
Sure, right.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of functionality is what people are looking for, because the monitors, like I said, will most likely be connected to our networks and we'll be talking to them over Ethernet.
Yeah, we
Cool,
do
thanks.
actually had on our 3010, and you can purchase this as an accessory. We did have like a off-bound control panel that was like a physical switcher, just very similar to that one. But we can definitely look into, you know, integrating with other industry common ones. That's not a big problem at all.
Cool. And just so you guys know, I'm sharing
Good to know.
Nate's email in the chat window. If you have any feature requests or ideas, send him an email and let him know, and he'll try and take it to the team.
While we have some time, I believe my colleague Robert said he got messaged a question about the displays features. The question was, how many of the displays features can be simultaneously used? So to my knowledge, there's no hard cap. Some of the features do overlap each other. So for example, if you wanted to use our false color with our peaking at the same time, those kind of aren't going to play together nicely. But all of our scopes can be shown simultaneously. You know, pixel value checking can be shown with all of our scopes. There's not really like a hard cap there. It's just you have to be aware of which features kind of overlap each other.
Yeah, that is one tool that I did not actually mention. I just overlooked it. It's just we do have this great false color for HDR, so that the scale is actually in nits from 0 to 10,000, and you could break it down by color, and you can actually dial in which colors are covering which areas of luminance.
That can be changed to an IRE scale as well, if you're used to working with that format.
So you can manually adjust that scale, right, to set your own levels for colors?
Yep.
Yeah, you could change the boundaries, not like radically, but you can. There are like certain ranges where you can change that too.
Okay. Another question someone had was about the split view where you can compare SDR to HDR. I think people would love to see as much functionality when you're in that mode. Like I said, like to do the wipe, if you can move the white bar horizontally side to side or vertical, or even rotate it like a clock. The more tools like that where you can compare, because right now we're in an era where DPs are still not fully confident with the technology. So if we can show them, you know, before and afters or like live views of what the HDR would look like and then what the SDR would look like, I think it's only confidence boosting.
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually have already written that one down. So all these, like I said, all these feedback is just great for us, and anything that we can do to further propel our tool set to make it more user friendly for you guys is something we're most definitely interested in.
This is Michael. I want to say mention a few things on the commercial side of this, not a commercial, but the business side of this. A few things. One is I know the mention about Netflix came up, and about there's always been this question about whether they're going to require HDR 4K monitors or they're going to spec a range of specifications. And it doesn't look like they are. It looks like what they're going to do is require you to have a monitor that meets Dolby specifications when they require a monitor on set. So there'll be other manufacturers that that may meet that specification. But if you're thinking about buying something to take on set on a Netflix show, future-proof wise, that's the direction they're going in. It has to be Dolby certified. So that those 9 points that that Nate showed on the slide are the 9 features that the monitor has to have to be Dolby certified. And then the second thing I wanted to mention is we're doing everything we can to help promote our displays and get them on set. So if you have projects or you have situations where you need to get a hold of a monitor, you're thinking about buying one, you want to do a split revenue, any suggestion that you have about how we can do business together, let David or Nate or I know, and we're open to having any discussion. So for instance, when the people from Mindhunter came to us because Eric wanted to use a couple of displays, there wasn't inventory available, and David Fincher wasn't sure if he wanted to buy it or if the rental house was going to buy it. So we got involved in that conversation and made it work for everyone. So don't be shy about reaching out and asking. Can't make any promises. Like, we're not going to put free monitors on shows for 6 months, but I'm sure we can work something out. You could ask that. Certainly worth asking. But we're aggressively looking to try and get these in the hands of creative people who can use them and take advantage of the tool set. And that's why today has been great. because it gives you all a chance to find out what it is that we're offering.
Hey, just to speak to that, you'll find this funny, Michael, but I've talked to a few people about this, that like in the world of DIT, HD just got really good only like the last few years. And I know that, like you just kind of have to understand that like we've been struggling for the last 10 years to get 5-inch monitors, 7-inch monitors, wireless video, the DAs to be able to handle the cabling, etc. Like at least I'm sure the broadcast and sports arenas, they've had it figured out for years. I'm not saying it's just getting good. And now I think everyone's really concerned with 4K and pushing 4K around set. We don't have the tools that we do with HD, and we don't have the monitors, and we don't have the support. So I think everyone's a little uncomfortable going the 4K route, and even the HDR route for portability and power reasons and costs, and ROI until it's kind of matured. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I certainly see it from both perspectives, because having worked for manufacturer and also having worked on set and having to buy my own equipment. If the tools that were necessary to fully utilize 4K HDR production and post-production were similar in price, or even a double in price, I think you'd see a lot more adoption. I certainly understand that the difference between buying a $25,000 or $30,000 monitor for your cart versus two of them, versus buying two $3,000 monitors, that's a big decision to make. What I think will help and hurt at the same time is the OTT companies like Netflix requiring their productions to use them. And unless they loosen the budgets a little bit so that there's some money to help pay for this stuff, it's going to drag for a while. The other thing I want everyone to know is there is no magic Moore's law equation that's going to make these things the same price as high-end HD monitors. It's just the cost of the panels, the yield of the panels makes it, unless you're going with a consumer device where they can make 10,000 or 100,000 of them, it's going to be more expensive. So as a manufacturer, we have to work with the companies that are going to require you to use them to make it more affordable. They're going to have to work with the producers that hire you to let you charge more money for the equipment. And I think it's all going to have to come together at the same time. I think right now, if you're investing in HDR displays, you have to get your money back as quickly as possible. But I do think that there's going to be more opportunity for you to have this kit and be able to rent it to productions as the studios require it to be on set.
And what is Canon doing on the consumer side to support, like basically the quality that we're putting into on-set monitoring? What is Canon doing for the consumer run to make sure that they're getting as close to the same experience?
Well, we don't make consumer TVs, so.
Oh, there's an.
But all of our cameras do some sort of HDR. So.
Yeah.
Sin Cohen has a question.
It's obviously a difficult business decision, because you don't want to. Jeffrey Hagerman and I had a conversation about this about 8 months ago. I guess he invested in 4 of the Sony 3000s for a show, and he didn't even pay for one of them. And then he was stuck with them because they discontinued it and came out with a new model. But he told me that he had to buy them because he wouldn't have got the job if he hadn't had the monitors. Couldn't get them at any of the rental houses because they weren't available. So it's a tough spot. But that's why I mentioned, if you have a proposal for how you can make it work for us and you can make it work for yourself, bring it to us and we'll have a conversation about making it work, trying to make it work at least.
Sin Cohen has a question. Sin, make sure you unmute yourself.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Awesome. So first of all, these displays look pretty awesome. I really appreciate the demo. I do want to just kind of push back on the technology a little bit, and I've had this conversation with almost everybody at this point. But the costs are quite high, as we were just saying. There seems to be sort of a technology dead zone to me right now in the panel space, where OLED had some certain qualities and certain limitations, and now with these displays and what most manufacturers are coming out with for new displays, we're kind of back to LCD with some kind of LED backlighting. So in this case, just to reiterate and make sure that I'm clear, all of these displays are LCD with some sort of zone backlighting, correct?
Yes.
So even in the best case with these, if you've got areas of particular contrast that are in within a specific zone, you're not going to see those minimum black and maximum bright levels, because it has to do some sort of mathematical compensation for that, right?
Right.
You could have edges and things like that. So I mean, well, I see that these are filling an important need for certain workflows, where nothing else is available. My concern is that, like, I don't want to spend $20,000 plus on a monitor with this technology in the hopes that something much more suitable, without those limitations is on the horizon.
Yeah, so I can kind of speak to that. So obviously, you can see right away the OLED is going away. Even Sony, that's been the major proponent of OLED over the past few years in this space, has moved to an LCD model as well. So the next thing that would be coming after LCD, if I were to guess, would probably be micro LED. That's probably not going to be here for maybe 5 to 10 more years. So I think people are going to be sticking for at least the next few years with the LCD model. The thing that differs between manufacturers is obviously the panels they use, the LED configurations they use, but then obviously the image processing and local dimming algorithms is of utmost importance there as well. So I agree with you. OLED did have its strengths. It beat LCD in several categories. Obviously, perfect blacks. You don't run into the local dimming issues just because all of those pixels are self-emissive there as well. But it also had its own slew of problems, right? So burn-in, you couldn't really run them very hot, so you can never get full screen peak luminance, things like that. I think burn-in and after image was probably the most common issues seen with OLED, especially for those in post-production. We visited several studios where with OLEDs, when they were working on shows with different aspect ratios, they would run into letterboxing burn-ins because you would be switching from UHD to the full DCI 4K. So you're not wrong in that LCD is not a perfect solution, but I think as the industry has evolved and it's moving towards more HDR, where you're trying to push those limitations in brightness and things like that, I think that's kind of where all the manufacturers are steering back to until something new comes along. Obviously, I know that's not a perfect answer, but I think there's kind of almost like a checks and balances game with every type of technology in the display world right now.
Yeah, just to follow up on that a little bit, what Nate said, to Sin, in your question, we do have to use tools right now because I just bought a new HDR TV, before the whole coronavirus situation, and it's there's a lot of TVs out there, and there's a lot of content that those TVs need. And so the demand is there right now to actually monitor on set, because you need to have that a realistic preview of what that HDR image is going to look like. The LCD technologies right now are not perfect because they're not giving you the discrete pixels. And I think what you're talking about is the local dimming artifacts. There is two different versions of the LCD technology. One is called the dual cell modulating layers, or dual panel technology. And that also has drawbacks, pros and cons. And I think until we come out with that perfect solution, which may be micro LED, in about 5 or 6 years, there still is a need for people to monitor an HDR on set. And so we do offer some of the strongest solutions there are for you to use. Yeah, I hope that you can come by Burbank sometime and just check it out for yourself with the 3120C and just how fine that our local dimming features are.
Hey, David, there's a question, and maybe this is also for Michael as well. The tool set, I think everyone's really impressed by that and enjoys that. Are there any plans to make almost like a leader sized monitor or tool set that would complement your monitors, like an external video scope with all the
We
tools
sell-
built into it?
We sell the tool set now for the same price as a monitor, and you get the monitor for free.
Yeah.
No, Nate, that's a question that I can't answer. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
People said
so-
that.
as a
Yeah.
separate tool.
That is a very common request we've gotten. Just from the indications I've got from Japan, I wouldn't expect anything like that in the next year. But that's definitely something we're closely considering. Especially, we've also gotten recommendations to make monitors of varying sizes, both smaller and larger than what we have right now. We've gotten requests from the likes of your colleagues to make small, like 7-9-inch monitors, and we've also got requests from DPs and directors who want our same technology in like a 55-inch screen. So I think we're just trying to gauge what sizes are kind of the most bang for the buck right now, and that's where we've landed right now with the 17, 24, and 31 model. But we're definitely looking into potentially expanding that in the future for sure.
Right. There was a question about because we ran into this a lot with Sony monitors. If you get a scratch or a crack on the monitor, do you guys have what would be the process to getting a screen repaired, and
Sure.
is it going to cost the price of a new monitor to get that screen repaired, even if it's a small little nick?
No worries, that's a good question. So as part of my responsibilities as the quality engineer, I do handle all of our service procedures for the displays. So all of our displays do come with default 1-year warranties where you would be covered any damages, screen replacement, anything like that. If you were to need a service, all of our repairs are done in our Costa Mesa, California office, so not too far from your neck of the woods. We're actually discussing potentially opening up another service location in Burbank just to better suit the Hollywood community. We do offer service loaner replacements because we've talked to people when they were trying to get their monitors serviced from other manufacturers. They weren't really appreciating the downtimes, so we really want to limit downtime. So if you do end up sending a monitor in and you're working on a show, for example, we'll send you a replacement of either equivalent or higher value. So if you're working with a 17, for example, and we don't have any other 17s in stock to send you, we'll send you a 24 that has better image quality specs so you can continue doing your work. As far as pricing, I can give kind of a loose estimate that unfortunately the panel is the most expensive part of the display. So you're looking at around maybe on average, if I had to guess, maybe like 40% of the overall display cost would be to replace a panel. That's just a very rough estimate. And obviously, I could reveal specific numbers if you had a particular model you had in mind. I can look up the numbers on my end and send that info your way as well. If you guys want to shoot me an email, I can get you those information.
Sweet. Ben Hopkins.
Sorry,
go ahead, Nate.
Yeah, just to reiterate, we also do make a point to stock parts. So, even though we do have service loaners, we're not trying to keep you waiting on your original panel. So we make a point to stock at least a couple panels of each size in our California warehouse, just to really ensure that we're getting that quick turnaround time. Obviously, those are very expensive parts to have lying around. So we do work closely to kind of balance that. But we think we've landed in a good spot as far as our service, and we really pride ourselves at Canon in our service, especially with the calibration service and our low turnaround times for repairs. So we're definitely willing to work with you guys in that front as well.
Cool. Ben Hopkins had a question. Ben, make sure you unmute yourself.
Hey guys. Yeah, could you please recap the feature set across the lineup? I'm particularly thinking about all of the tool sets through your menu systems that are available, wanting to get a sense of limitations on different models or sizes, or is all your software and tool set available on all your models? And also, you had mentioned, as part 2 of the question, paying for an upgrade for certain feature sets. If you could go over all of those instances across your model lineup. Thank you.
Yeah, so I can take those. So to answer your first question, very simple answer. Every single feature is available across all models. So you're never gated by what model you have. The same features that you see in a 3120 are available in a 17. You're obviously locked by some of the image quality limitations. So, you can't display, 2000 native image on a 17. You can obviously emulate it using our HDR range, but any feature set that's included in our HDR toolkit is applicable across all And then I'm actually already forgetting your second question. So can you reiterate that, please?
You talked about upgrade. I think
Oh,
you
right.
did.
Yep. Okay. So the only paid upgrade available to any of our monitors is for our 17-inch displays. So they come stock at 300 nit peak brightness, but you can pay for an upgrade to boost that to 600 nits. The upgrade is relatively cheap when you consider the overall package. I believe we charge around $1,000 for that upgrade. Most of the time we end up just including it in a line item, like we'll throw it in as a value add. I will kind of make a little disclaimer and say that those ranges are going to be changing soon. So you should definitely tune in on April 20th to learn more about, what our display lineup will look like from contrast or image quality specification wise pretty soon here in just a couple weeks. It'll be changing.
Okay. And how does I know you have like a 6G and then it goes to 12G. How does that limit the specific limitation on the lower end side, that what you can't do?
Yeah, so the only thing that the 3 or 6 to 12G limitation would be what signals you can import in with. So obviously, if we have a 3G monitor, for example, let's take our 2420 compared to our 2421. So our 2420 still has 4 SDI inputs. They're all just now 3G instead of 12G. So you could still view a 12G signal. You would just need 4 cables rather than just the one 12G cable with the 2421. So if you're not really frequently working with multiple input signals, 3G is probably fine. But if you're someone who's constantly looking for either to reduce cable volume or you're playing with multiple input signals, then a 12G model might be more your speed.
A lot of the cameras coming out now, including our C500 Mark II, have 12G capabilities. So it is, of course, very useful to have a 12G capable display. And one other note is that there is one difference in that the 3G to 12G different 6G to 12G models is that the 12G models can do 8K, can input 8K, can downsample 8K for you to 4K. That's also, like, for the future, it's a great feature to have.
For sure. I will say another interesting tidbit that I don't know if we touched on, David, earlier with our Cinema Link function is that with some of our displays that does include a EOS Cinema mode, a picture mode, that allows you to, whenever you're shooting with a Canon camera, if you make profile or picture color gamut adjustments on the camera, the display will automatically switch using that metadata communication. So you don't have to worry about any possible user setup error there. The display will just match whatever your camera's set to, which is pretty seamless in that way.
One note is that I know that we touched upon the expense of these and trying to recoup that expense possibly. And I know that a lot of DITs choose to purchase these displays and, to get a feedback from production for that. However, we do have 2 rental companies here in the United States that do rent out the 2411. One of them is Otto here in Los Angeles and in Atlanta, and the other one is VER. So we hope to add to that pool of rental companies that can actually rent you our displays, and we'll certainly try to keep you informed as to what the places are.
Awesome. Hey, Jasper Racking had a question. Jasper, you're up.
Yeah, I'm looking at the 17, and it looks to me like a basic 17-inch monitor at 4K, you need to be pretty close to it in order to be able to see 4K. By the old SMPTE visual acuity numbers, you'd be about 12-inch off of the screen. Yep. So you've got a lot of cost that's put into that 17 in order to show 4K image that most people aren't going to be watching anyways. You've put an awful lot of smaller dimming zones and things like that. So your relationship between the dimming zones and your actual resolution of the screen is a lot less. Why isn't the 17 available just as an HD monitor? Because a 600 nit 17-inch HDR HD DC capable monitor with a bunch of diagnostic tools built into it and a good scope, that would be a pretty easy sell. But looking at $23,000 for a 17-inch monitor DC that's probably going to go over on its stand because the director's leaning his coffee against it, I don't really see that much.
Yeah, it's certainly a good question and a good point. I don't disagree with you that having a 2K option with the same tool set would be valuable.
For sure.
Unfortunately, David and I are only voices in the overall pond that is Canon. So we can't really speak to why some decisions were made. I can kind of, guess that we wanted to differentiate ourselves from the competition, right? So Sony's just now coming out with their first 4K 17-inch model or 18-inch model. And that I can also say that for our 17s, we're finding a lot of success around the globe, more often in the broadcast space, and in Asia, Europe, and our colleagues over there, their broadcast worlds are already at 4K. So we're kind of behind in that sense. So I think it was kind of an internal decision on the Japanese side to look at the broadcast market holistically across the globe and not just segment it to one particular US market or even the post market here. But that's definitely a good point. And, David and I can definitely take that recommendation again to our colleagues and see if there's any wiggle room there now.
Yeah, I mean, we're not really using 4K at all to move images around on set.
Right.
Not really transmitting. There's a few people who have tried it and they pretty quickly step away from it. It's not something that's really being pushed. We start looking at these 12G cables that run, very limited lengths. You start, trying to move things like that. All the tool set that we normally would have on a film set starts to go away. So I don't see HD necessarily going away that quickly on our acquisition side. Sure, once you're onto a truck or once you're onto an edit suite or a color room, you can start throwing 12G all over the place, but it doesn't make an awful lot of sense in something that you'd expect to be able to run 150 footers off of a technocrane, and it's just not going to happen anymore because you've got this need for 4K that you've got on a 17-inch monitor that nobody's standing close enough to actually watch and see 4Ks out of. You guys have learned that on the Canon side with the diminishing returns of how many more pixels do you want on a single 35 millimeter film camera. You get 42, 50, 150 pixels, 150 K resolution on a camera. It's not getting you that much further. We usually use the HD. We want to have those HD monitors still available, not necessarily spending $25,000 on a 4K monitor.
Yep. No, I think all the points you made are very sound and very accurate. So like I said, we'll take the feedback from you guys right to Canon Inc. And having voices behind just our own definitely helps promote that sort of change. So I thank you for the feedback. It's great.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jasper. Danny, you're up. Just make sure to unmute yourself, Danny.
Question for the Canon guys. Calibration, is there direct integration with Lightspace? And is there any potential of having recalibration done at one of your service centers?
Yeah, so Lightspace, we have no direct integration right now as far as I'm aware of. We've only worked with Portrait Displays Calman, but we're definitely looking for new partners for calibration. So that's definitely something we've been looking into on our end. So hopefully that will be coming soon. As far as the calibration being done at our service centers, the service that we're offering here in the US will actually come to you, but you can always, if you'd rather, send it in to a service center. That can be done. Now, I'm not too sure what their procedures are like in Europe, but I can definitely get a hold of my European colleagues and ask that question for you. We prefer to do our calibration where our users are going to be using the displays, just because we find that to be a little more bang for your time and your buck, just because we'd rather calibrate to your environment rather than to a lab that may not have the same ambient lighting and things like that you're using in the field. But I can definitely reach out to some of my colleagues and see what the offerings in Europe would look like for you guys.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Good question.
Is there anything else?
Michael. Yeah, Danny, this is Michael. One of the things that for those of you that are outside the Canon US area of influence, just to let everyone know, Canon Inc., which is our parent company in Japan, is the parent company, but we work for Canon USA, and we have some influence and some communication with our colleagues in the other business units, but we're representing Canon USA, and the things that we're offering and talking about are based on our market here. But I think the feedback is great, and we will make sure that we get it to our colleagues in Europe. And I have fed back the private conversations that we've had. I have fed that back to the people in the UK. So I would say keep that coming. I made sure I gave them your picture and your home phone too. No, I said it was anonymous feedback from colleagues that I have in Europe.
Is there anything else on the Canon side or any other questions you guys want to ask?
No, just look forward to seeing you guys, once we reopen the facility for whatever event that I think that we possibly arrange with Michael Broadbent.
Yeah, we have, we've only done, I think one event or two events with the DIT-WIT in Burbank.
I think maybe two, yeah.
But I think this is a good chance for those of you that haven't, that are local to the LA area or working in the LA area after this, the COVID stuff is done, to come by and pay a visit, because the facility is designed as a resource for creative people. And the DIT group is definitely an important creative group for us. So you're welcome to come anytime. I will make sure that when we're all able to leave our house, that I'll send a reminder and a note and directions and all that. And also, I think this is a good opportunity because you've got the right people here to start giving us feedback and helping us to develop the products as they continue to grow, to be more addressing the features and functions that you need in your specific business.
Sure. There's a request for a Vancouver demo as well.
Definitely work with our Canadian colleagues and arrange that.
Yeah.
All right, and then just so everyone knows, after April 20th, we plan to do another one of these where we can focus on cameras and lenses, but we can't really share any information until Canon has their official press release. So there'll probably be another one of these.
Yeah, and if there's anything on the displays that we announce on the 20th, and I know that there will be, I'll be on that call too after the 20th for the cameras, but you could of course ask me, or if Nate's on it as well, what, if they have any follow-up questions on the display announcements.
All right. Anything else? Any last chance to ask a question, guys? We'll probably wrap this up unless Canon has more to say or. Oh, there we go.
I mean, this was a
Just
great
want to say
opportunity.
thank you. Everyone stay safe.
Thank you.
Try not to go crazy, stir crazy. I know you need to be out in the field and out on set, but so the sooner we can get past this and get back to what we really want to be doing, the better.
And stay tuned for the 20th, because we'll definitely be having some updates on the display side as well.
There was a question. If I stop recording right now, can we talk about what's coming out on the 20th?
Good stuff coming out.
No.
Nope.
All right.
Good try.
Well,
though.
thank you guys. This was great, and this will be on the DIT-WIT YouTube